Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you all. So, we're going to be continuing on the course about basic foundations of Buddhist culture to the introductory level. And so, we're going to look at views today, largely. So, views cause people to diverge, they cause people to separate, and we're going to look at some of the qualities and the details about that today. So there's a lot of material to cover over. There's a book which is specifically about a record of lots of controversies that happened way long ago, a couple of hundred years after the Buddha was alive. Monks, nuns, schools started disagreeing, and so the disagreements that they had are finally recorded, and they're the same debates that people tend to talk about today. So this one type is just having points that people, issues that people separate on and they're not sure about, or they quibble over. Another thing is also just views. So I'm going to have a detailed look in views. Another book, the very first book in the Buddhist canon, which is divided into 3 sections, and the very, very first book of the first books is called The Perfect Net of Views. And so there it's an interesting thing that's a list of 62 types of views that the Buddha gave. And so it's interesting there to see, like, so, you know, how does that religion or this school or that viewpoint fit together with what the Buddha was talking about, and what these have about it. So an interesting one, new way of approaching that kind of subject. So those are very important to do. So without much further ado, let's get into that. So, just to put it in context, first of all, Nibbana should always, it's easy to get lost in this. The Buddha called the views a thicket or a forest, and he said that people are caught and entangled and ensnared in all the thorns of this, so they get lost in their way, and therefore they head off, as if you're looking at a desert or a jungle, and you see tracks where people have gone off into the desert and just dried up. He said this is a kind of analogy for people who mislead, with good intention even, they can mislead people off, and those people then get exhausted and they never find the coolness of Nibbana. So Nibbana is where we're heading, and right view is approximate cause for the path to arise. So it's very, very important to clarify what is meant by right and what is meant by view. So this is called in the Pali language Samma Ditti. Ditti means view, Samma means correct. So the opposite is called Micca Ditti, wrong views. Micca can also mean perverted. It means it started off in one way but it got twisted along the way and never ended up on the right direction. Micca Ditti, distorted views. So just to show you again where we're going to look for this book called the Brahmajala, the Perfect Net of Views. This is a map of the Digha Nikaya, the long stories. 3 books, 13 books, 10 books, and 11 books there, called the Brahmajala Sutta, that first one, D1. Now, the other book we're going to have a look at, just an introduction to it, to show its existence at all, and that is called the Katthavatthu, the Points of Controversy book, interesting one. So if we look in the Pali Canon, we have the Digha Nikaya, the long stories, middle length, Majjhima, Samyutta grouped, Anguttara numbered, and Khuddaka is a rich basket of lots of different types of short stories, and then Abhidhamma, the higher teachings. In the Abhidhamma, that's divided into 7 groups, and then in that we've got the 5th one, there is called the Katthavatthu. There it is, Katthavatthu, which means the points of controversy. During that time, and we're going to look at the timeline of when this happens, the Buddhist schools started to split and separate and become have different opinions about what should be taught and the way things should be continued to be taught. So we can have a look at, within the points of controversy, it's divided up mainly into three things. The views that are held, so they might have differences of opinion, and they might have, and then there are the subjects that come under discussion, and then there are the names of the different schools that held them, so they actually have different names. We'll look into that in detail. So back to the Brahmajala Sutta. Brahma can mean perfect wisdom. Jala is a net, like a fishing net. So everyone would be found within that net, or it's like the internet is a net. So it's the same thing. You'll find all these different sites where people have pinned their viewpoint. It's also got different names. The Atta Jala, Atta means meaning. Dhamma Jala means truth, so it's the net of truth. And Ditti Jala, the net of views. So in it, we're describing here, it's described 62 views that the Buddha said you'll always find people within that net. There's also an introductory section about sila, which is morality, and it's in small, minor details, or the entry levels, the medium length ones, and the great detailed one about the morality. But we'll skip that today. We're just going to go straight on to talk about the views. So there are different ways of dealing with views. The one way is to do it with these 18 views by dividing them into 18 and 44. So the 18-44 division, in that way, the causes of the 18 views showed here are all relating to the past. And it's by talking about the past or relating to the past that those people came to those viewpoints. Again, we'll go into this to explain. So the 44 are all relate to the future. So you might have a view saying, after death you will be reborn in heaven. So this is a future. It's all dependent on the viewpoint that they're talking about in there. Or someone will say, you're going to die at death and there's nothing more. So there's a viewpoint, but that's talking about future death. So there are other ones that talk about the creation of the universe. So that's talking about the past, like this. So these are views like this. We'll have details coming up. So of the ones, the 18 that relate to the past, these are categorized up into 5 different ones. So we're talking about time in this one. So this is a very important aspect. So the first 2 groups, within these are subdivided. First ones, where what's being talked about is eternal. What's being talked about is another issue. It can be the ego, the soul, the world, the universe. One of those, eternal. Secondly, there's a mixture one, semi-eternal. It will say, like, my soul is eternal, but the world will perish. Viewpoint. So that's one example of one. 3, it's only talking about the universe, what's out there. It's not talking about subjective at all. So you get scientists and they're out there with the Hubble scope looking into deep space, or they're talking about the Big Bang, or they're talking about steady state theory, and so on. They're only talking about the universe. If you try to talk about your Pisces personality or something, they'll shut up, we don't have to talk about it. We're only talking about the real, that out there, the universe. The 4th type, when they're asked about this, they just avoid answering. It's called eel wriggling. They keep shifting and don't actually, when you try to pin down what they're talking about. This is called eel wriggling. Kind of sitting on that fence. 5thly, there's people who, whatever their viewpoint is, they say, well, there's no cause. Or if you say, well, how did that come about? They say, it just happened. There's a kind of way of answering that doesn't actually deal with a cause. So the ones that deal with the 44 that deal with the future, 3 sections. The first is about your ability to perceive, with or without a body, existing after death. So some people say, ashes to ashes, and the body goes to death, but your soul goes on, and then it will see celestial palaces, or whatever it is like this. So it's talking in some way about perception's existence after death. Secondly is annihilation belief, that in one way or another, it all ends at death. Either the soul ends at death, the self ends at death, the personality ends at death, or the body ends at death, or something else ends at death. But It's called annihilation belief, or the world will end, and that's us. So 5 beliefs on attainable nirvana. So nirvana, there are 5 ways of dealing with nirvana. That means you can actually, you can own it, you can experience it, you can have it in some way. So it would be about those. Okay? So for now, enough detail just about those. So I don't only want to do that, but this is an important bridge understanding about some of the modes of discussion and the kind of subjects it comes under. So when they relate to it in Controversies, you know what some of it is being talked about. So there's an overview of some of those subjects. So basically we're talking about right view and wrong views. A lot of the time the Buddha talks about just the absence of some of these views as being right view. It's just the presence of some of these views leads people to believe and act certain ways, whether it's flying a jumbo jet into the Twin Towers or whatever it is, the view was there. Back to points of controversy, the Katthavatthu. So let's just have a look at the structure of the book. So it's divided into 3 main sections we looked at a little bit earlier. So one of them is just the chapters themselves, and these are listed in canonical order, in the order that they show up throughout the canon, the books. Secondly, the actual schools that came up were like, what were their names? What did they believe? Why didn't they get on with the other ones? Some of the schools grouped together. And those 2 of them believed the same thing, and another one didn't, for various views. Next, we get this grouped by subject. So all the things about the Buddha, or all the things about death, or all the things about arahants, like fully enlightened people who aren't Buddhas, all the things about like this pleasure, right? All the things about karma. So there are 23 chapters. Just to give you a brief introduction about the way that this book is divided up before we go into it. Those 23 chapters, all together, on average they have about 10 points, a chapter that they cover, and they'll go through those one by one with argument, counter-argument, and then usually ending up in kind of unresolved. That's why it was controversy that these schools went apart and they actually didn't agree, and they just continued not agreeing. It's not like it all comes and they shake hands and go back to the temple together. They set up, and we look at the history of some of that. So it's about 10 points a chapter, 23 chapters, 225 points about. So, they're grouped by schools. There's 12 group headings. Often you hear it said that there's 18 schools, that it's split up into 18 schools. Not quite as simple as that, as you'll see. But this comes under 12 group headings. So you might have 3 schools all held the same view, that there is a soul, for example, as one of them. You know, but 3 of those schools would say, we agree with you, we don't do that. So then, group by subject, 10 main group headings that come up. So there we have it. That's roughly the infrastructure, the skeleton of how the book's made up, and the kind of way that the subject is covered. Let's talk about when this happened, in order to get a bit of perspective, and also a little bit about when the Buddha was around. So this is going to be done by before Christ Anno Domini, so the O level. 0 point. So we're going to go back 5 to 500 BC plus a little bit. Good. Okay, let's have a look at another form of timelines. And this is this one plus what happens next, this next page. So we're going to be looking at how the Theravada and these other schools in one form of mapping start to branch out, and by you get to 100 BC there are some other groups that split into 2 schools, 4 schools, 5 schools and so on like this. Okay. So this looks a little bit like this. This is one version, to let you know there are several versions of it where they look through the history books and they've looked at the book, you know, and then afterwards they come up with another book so it doesn't quite agree, but roughly speaking. So here we see I'm from the Theravada school. So we see the Theravada school, and on this map we're maintaining an unbroken line right to the current day. some of the other schools, like Vajjiputtakas, like Mahimsasakas, it's obviously like two of the big troublemaking divisions like there, because all these other people, they all go off and they go, yeah, wait a minute, no, we don't agree with you on that one, we go, you know, and like they go off on their own until they peter out in the desert here and then snuff out whatever happens then. Some other schools don't start up until later on. No, they start up their own school placement. So, other ones here. A little bit difficult to read here. I'll show you in clearer writing. This actual lineage here, in one of the descriptions, became the Theravada, strangely. I can't figure out quite how they've done that. But they say the Dhamma-Gutikas became the Theravada. There's another one, Sabbati-Vadins, Kassapiyas, Sautrantikas. No. I think that was it. Sankentikas, Sutta-Vadins, ones who just don't see. Just give you a rough idea. So this is quite an important map for understanding how what is the result of when two groups of schools split up and they start saying, we're right, you're wrong, you're right, we're wrong, and they start squabbling and then having a separating out and then actually going completely, off on it and then starting basically a new religion that does say, look, the Buddha was reborn in heaven, we died, and the other one saying, no, he wasn't, he died when he died, he meditated him out of existence, he's nothing wrong. He said, no, we're right, so you're not, no, and then they all go off like that. So it never gets resolved, and even they give a sort of full argument, the other one goes, no, not having that, no. And it gets unresolved, and therefore you get, and all the other people say, no, we agree with him, and they all go, and they club up, and they get a slightly different uniform, and so on it goes on. And so this is showing how some of this has happened. Seeing this in 450 BCE. Now, a lot of these also shouldn't be taken as carved in stone. They should be taken with a pinch of salt. But this is one way that Wikipedia has shown them. So just to say, don't take these as absolutely gospel. Recently, there's been some excavations that show this was actually quite a bit earlier than the Buddha was around, for example. So 450 BC, early Sangha, just generally named the early Sangha, not even necessarily called Mahayana Theravada or any of these other names, just called the early Sangha. Sangha means a community, the community of the Buddha's disciples. Then around 250 BC, according to this one, Theravada Buddhism gets going and maintains an unbroken lineage. Greek Buddhism, Silk Road Buddhism. And then we've got strains of the Mahayana starting to come up about 100 CE, Christian era. 500 CE really starts taking off. And then boom, Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana, comes in at 700 CE. So we're talking a good 1,200 years, give or take. Have I got that right? 500? Yeah, roughly. After the Buddha. So a lot of people just assume seeing the Dalai Lama, he goes, the real thing must be the old. So it's good to see, just to correct some of those views. So early Buddhist schools, Theravada, notice that difference. Alright, so let's carry on. Start to see how some of this evolved. Yeah. I should also say I'm not a huge, deep authority who spent years in the British Museum studying something like this. It's something that I'm exploring my way into too, and as I learn about it, I'll relay on what I'm picking up. So do excuse any slight, you shouldn't say like, hey, you said 500 the two. Well, it says it wasn't 500. Yeah, these are general guidelines for what's happened. So. Looks like the first two big divisions there, Vajjiputtakas. Puttaka is a son, so it's sons of the Vajjayans, and the Vajjayan were a very big tribe, a race and kingdom. Vajjayans talked about that. Mahimsasakas, a kind of great school, and then also Mahasanghikas, and they're a very important one. They have some links to the Mahayana, but this shouldn't be taken to be the formation of the Mahayana. Dhamma-Gutikas, Sabbati-Vadins, and then the lineage, how long as those dotted lines continue, means they continued on a great long period of time, 1,000 years. So you can just see how it starts to build up over time as people formulate opinions and they formulate and encroach themselves around rituals and ideals, reinterpreting or taking a stance controversially. So the ones shown in the square boxes here and with these dots, they're the ones that we're going to take a bit of a look at, because some of the other ones aren't really involved in these debates. Just to clarify that. Ones with the dots there, and they're among some of these controversial schools, these ones. So there's the map again, one we just had a look. So those are the main ones that have got some very strongly held opinion that is significantly controversial. So here, superimposed over the wiki, when here you got the schools listed like this. And this one here you see Theravada, that's the one that I'm a member of, stemming from this one's Stavirada, which is actually the Sanskrit name for elders. Thera means elder. Vada is a way, so the way of the elders. Okay, so just some names to get familiar with there. And this one here, the first Sangha split going off into two. The other one, Mahasangika. And they, original split, as I've understood it from what I've seen so far, it's a little bit difficult to read in between the lines, was on a rule of opinion. And I think I was told by one teacher it was the rule of opinion whether to touch money or not. Just to give you a little bit of perspective there, but I'll real check that. But one of them said we should be in these modern times, like we're talking about like 400 years, before Christ. They say, these modern times we ought to better touch money. It's not like it was in the old days. And some of them said, no, the Buddha said don't ever touch even gold, silver, or anything. Full stop, and they went, no, you're being old-fashioned, So they didn't agree, and they didn't agree, and they didn't agree. It's like, some of these big questions, can a monk actually have sex or not? And he goes, he can, in certain occasions it's all right, and then it can lead to enlightenment. And others go, no, it's absolutely no. The Buddha was really clear about it, and others go, yes you can, no you can't, yes you can, no you can't. So some of these things you can't, there's no two ways about it, So then the schools separate out. So looking at this is the points of controversy, the kinds of subjects that they were disagreeing about, like about the Buddha. So some of the kinds of things that they were disputing about were his everyday usage. Some of them said like when he spoke about Nibbana, his voice went off into an area disco, and he started speaking really, 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 really fast at hyper lightning speed or something like that. And they said, no, he didn't. He just spoke normally all the time. He did. And they said, didn't. So getting to a sort of ding dong like that. Some that were about his powers, and some would say, oh, he could do this and he could do that. And they said, no, he couldn't. And they said, he did. I saw him do it. And so they would go. Again, difference of opinion. His marks on the body, he was supposed to have these some extraordinary marks on the body. Whether gifts to him brought a blessing or not, because if you give a sort of Scalextric racetrack to a boy, to a child, they go, thanks very much. They're full of passion and gratitude because you give them something. But the Buddha, is supposed to be just said, yeah, thanks very much, because he was so dispassionate about objects. So they're saying, well, did that mean that when you gave him something like food, you just put it to one side and went, yeah, he was completely passionless about it, or so? How did that work? And other people said, no, you gave anything to the Buddha, you get reborn in heaven, in the enormous celestial realm. So, differences of those kinds. Did he visit Earth by proxy? Did he teach by proxy? So, whose proxy? It's a meaning of like he stayed actually in a heavenly realm, but formed a holographic body on the Earth. It wasn't a real body. It was just moving about by his superpowers, like he was hovering in a UFO, the other side of the sun, going left bit, left bit, like with a remote control. They actually thought that, and some of them said, and the other one said, no, he didn't. No, he went to the toilet next to me down there. No, he sneezed, he had backache. No, it was really real. It was actually real, really real. So differences of those kinds coming in. Did he feel compassion, or the word pity, and so on? Okay. Was everything of him fragrant? Some of them said, yeah, he had an aura like rose petals. And they said, no, he didn't. He went to the toilet around the bush behind there and stunk afterwards. And so these are the kind of things that people get differences about, and they also don't get resolved about them. And so they often go off still in a huff and still not having an answer about it. And then arahants are fully enlightened monks. So they follow the teachings. They've also attained what the Buddha attained, but are they different or are they the same? Does that make them a Buddha, or what's the difference between a Buddha and a monster? Does karma affect the Buddha, an arahant?
Is he indifferent to sensations, or does he, if boiling water pours on him, does he actually really hurt, but he's just in an enlightened way hurt? So these kind of questions like that. Can he doubt or not? So these are the kind of things that go into examination. Probably for this session we won't be able to get into these in depth, but I want to introduce about the kind of things they go into. Devas are angels. Probably want this one point out because it's one of those sort of linked language things. Do they lead the higher life? So there are devas in heavenly realms that said they came down, they listened to the Buddha teaching, they would go off and meditate as angels, and they would also try to sort of meditate in the same way that people do on earth as well. Do they practice self-control, or do they just fly around in heaven enjoying having a good time? Things like that. Of the average man, it's like regular people who aren't monks and nuns, can they renounce lust totally and in will? Should they? Can they get insights? Can they have more than average experience? Again, it's a big, you get secular teachers, all kinds of Dhamma teachers in America, walking around in jeans and t-shirt. Do they to get the same things as monks or not, and nuns? This is an important one. I have a little bit of the individual, of the ego, of the personality. It's basically talking about there. So, because the Buddha said there wasn't a permanent entity or a soul to be found. And some of them said, yes, there is. I'm sitting here, I know it. And they would actually argue about it. So the way that the Theravadas then explain what's meant by the teaching, have a little look at that, which is quite good because then it explains what's meant by that and how to go back into your own experience to sort of check out what's meant by that. Otherwise it can be a bit confusing. Cosmology, we'll have a look at that, 31 planes of existence. Are animals reborn in heaven? So, good question. But these are the kind of things that often come up around the dinner table. With people going, you said earlier on this, but what does that mean with this? So, and then a lot of the answers are to be found in this very fascinating old text. Is space unconditioned? Right, what's the point about that? Nibbana, this state that the mind can enter into a state that's completely unconditioned, and that is the Buddha was teaching people to try to attain that. So there were people saying, well, space is unconditioned. So if you're reborn in space, you're also free of suffering then. So it's like proven not to be so. Otherwise, you're actually not to be floating around completely free of pain and suffering. Not true. And then some ethical points. So I'll move on because time is a little bit limited. So back to the question about the soul and the enduring personal entity. Very important point. So in this case, and there are 100 pages, so I've had to go through and sort of try to pull out a typical bit. It's not easy out of all this. So there are 100 pages devoted just to this subject. So this school actually called themselves the Personalityers. The school based on personality. They were so sure about it, they called themselves the Brahmajāla. So they said, they came to controvert with the Theravada, and they said, is it wrong to say the person is known in the sense of a real and ultimate fact? And the Thera said, yes. Brahmajāla said, well, yeah, is there not one whom we call mother? And the Thera said, yes. And Brahmajāla said, if there be then indeed, good sir, it is right to say the person is known in the sense of a real and ultimate fact. Again, is there not one whom we call father, or is there not one called brother, or sister, or merchants, or householders, or devas, or humans? And the Theravada say, yes. Brahmajāla said, if there be then indeed, good sir, it is right to say the person is known. So finish off. They said, there you go, you proved yourself wrong. So Theras then say, granting there are mothers, fathers, etc., is there anyone who, not having been a personal entity, becomes one? And the Puba said, well, no, you can't say that you weren't a personality and then you became one. You can't say that. You've always been it, like this. So the Theras then they said, granting the existence of a mother, is it for this reason that the person is known in the sense of a real and ultimate fact? They're a mother. And the Buddha say yes. Theras say, is there anyone who, having been a mother, is no longer a mother? He said, yes. Well, is there anyone who, having been a personal entity, is no longer one? And he said, yes. So that's the way they argue about it. He says, was there someone who wasn't a mother and then became a mother? And he says, well, there is something like that. If someone wasn't a mother and then became one, yes. He said, well, in the same way, is there someone who wasn't a personality and then became a personality? And he said, no, it's a constant thing. I said, well, there you go. Just argue yourself out. Yeah. And so on. Just have a quick review. This is the map of the primary Buddhist teachings as I've understood it. First aggregate, there's the body experience. Second aggregate, the feelings. Thirdly, all kinds of perceptions. And fourthly, mind states. So mind states like hate, like desire, like restlessness, like doubt, like jealousy. And then things like attention and intention and focusing. And then all the opposites of those negative ones, like doubt, confidence, hate, kindliness, desire, non-clinging, restlessness, equanimity. So you're going to be referring to some of those. And these are the 6 sense doors. Eye, ear, nose, taste, the body, and then the conceptual mind, like thinking about tastes or places or people or sounds or images or words or future planning and imagination and dreaming, events and so on. So all kind of thinking. So I'll be referring to that, because sometimes people say, I am the body, and they will go, well, are you the hardness? Or are you the temperature? Are you the standing position? Are you the blinking? Because these are all made up of very small individual moments that happen and then pass away, happen and pass away. So that's just to remind you about that, which covered in some of the previous sessions, but for some of those who haven't seen it yet. A bit overwhelming when you first see it, and you need to see it several times to give you a rough idea about this, called the 5 aggregates: body, feelings, perception, mind states, and the 6 sense doors. So back to the schools again. So these are some of those schools that were arguing some of those points. Just some of them, because by then these ones have got sort of co-joined and complex matter, not easy to pull out. For example, there was a recent case where we had the bhikkhuni ordination happening in Australia, and the Thai Sangha said, the bhikkhuni order had already died out. Well, it had died out in Thailand. But the researchers found that there was an unbroken lineage through one of these other related schools. I think it was the Dharmaguptaka school. But as you can see, Dharmaguptaka school is basically the same thing as the Theravada, which is down here. So they were able to hold up their argument that actually it's an unbroken lineage, because there were Dharmaguptaka nuns and bhikkhunis who carried on their unbroken lineage and were in Tibet and were in Bhutan and were in America in unbroken lineage. It was only that the fact that the Thai monks had only looked within their own nation, so it was allowed to basically go through in that way. Yeah. Another map, different version. So we've got various reporters. This comes from one report, just one report. So it's a graphic of that one report. But there were other ones as well where they said a slightly different version. Here, where you've got the Stavira Vada, which is the Theravada. And they carry on like that way. And you've got another way, the Mahasangikas. So don't get too involved in the different schools until we've heard more what they say. Another version, Staviravada. So basically you can see it goes into Mahasangika and Staviravada. Not a huge difference. They didn't sort of resort to like violence or something against each other. But often you can see the strains of their views coming out in various schools nowadays. So let's have another look back here. This is important. It also relates to views and the general model of existence. And this relates a lot to what happens when you meditate as well. Very important point. When you meditate, your consciousness gets more and more refined and subtler and subtler and subtler, and more pleasurable and more fine as you go up. Now if you die, and that's your common, your habit of mind, So you might not even need to take a physical body again. You can go into angelic realms like that. Yeah? You may be on the human plane and you do so much violent activity, non-stop shouting, cruel activity, that the weight and the gravity is so strong of your actions, you get reborn in a hell realm as well. And you have to dwell in it quite a long time until that gets worn out and you come back up again in one way. Similarly, a heavenly realm might be intensely pleasurable, just like a non-stop party, a karaoke orgy, something like that. And then it will wear out. All you did was a couple of helping out at the school fete a couple of times. Didn't do very much very good, and then you sort of come down again like that. Or you might have done some constructing of 20 hospitals or something, so you get all those people's benefit was given. So up and down, up and down. This game of sort of snakes and ladders, of karmic snakes and ladders, like falling down because of this, rising up because of that, falling down. Okay, so this plane of vertical ascension and descension, because we're not talking now about length of time, and we're not talking about the expanding of the size of the place that you're living in. We're just talking about the quality of consciousness. So there's 4 primary ones we talk about here in this case. The main one to kick off is karma loka. Karma means pleasure. So the human level with music, movies, sex, food, power, fame, happiness, these kind of things, joy. All the things that relate to the pleasure of the 6 senses. Love, donation, and also wholesome activities as well. The pleasure that comes from giving, the pleasure that comes from helping, the pleasure that comes from compassionate work, all those kind of things. All right? So those are relevant to the karma loka, like the Kama Sutra, same sort of thing. Karma means pleasure. Beyond that, to get to forms of pleasure which are higher than that, we start to look towards meditation. Finer, subtler. So here I've done where the kasina practice, which we'll be practicing later on, starts to fit in. So now we've got the physical body staying still, but the mind is concentrating. And its object is not moving around, it's not musical notes that are flickering and coming up and down or working in harmony, or tastes or sense or pleasures or theatre or so on. It's talking about something that's staying still, and it's the concentration that's giving the pleasure and the lightness. Water, fire and air kasinas, and then red, yellow, blue and white kasinas, and then light kasina. So as we concentrate on those for a long period of time, we get into also angelic consciousness. So the mind starts to become light and beautiful and radiant and peaceful and undisturbed and all such things like that. That's called the rupa loka, the space around as well. So when we remove we're on our object, and then we take that away and we just take the environment around as well as an object.
Can we sustain that?
Yes. The more that you sustain it using willpower, the greater and extended benefit we'll get from it.
Oh.
So it's practicing to extend it, and the attention span gets easier and easier and easier. It's like when you first learn piano, it's a draining thing to just learn the scales, that's nothing, do it again, and every note takes effort. But after a while, more and more practice, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, you play concert piano, doing that 4 hours in a lobby without even thinking about it. Your mind can hover and stay with its object without effort, like that. But the result of that will be pure sustaining, depending on how pure the contact with it is. First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. But with practice, being able to hold it for longer increases the abilities. Infinite perspective. So now we've been talking just about space around, but then you're taking it even that way. Just think about all the infinity of space in every different direction. Like when you start contemplating deep space and how it just goes on and on and on forever. Infinite space. Not just relating to what as far as you can see, but beyond. And then the awareness of noting that we do, I relate that one to that awareness of seeing, awareness of hearing, awareness of body, so noting of the sense doors. No thing, sphere of no things, difficult one to understand. Not perception, not non-perception. So it's perception, the word that's used there is this same, perception. So the meaning of that realm, which is the highest on the 8th level, not perception, but not perception either. So again, difficult one to understand. I'm still sort of penetrating and working on precisely what that means. My pet theory is that when we do a visualization of the space that is around us, we are using both memory and not non-memory as well at the same time. Because we're not remembering something that is absent, we're remembering something that's present. So we're using perception but not perceiving as well. We're sort of cancelling out the thinking process by filling the mind with what actually is. So you get a feeling of just having a mirror just reflecting what precisely is at the present moment and stilling the mind through that way. It might be what it means. It remains to be seen, but certainly doing that again for very long, increasing periods of time, you just empty the mind and still, and also vanish in the process, because there's no space then for an subject. There's no object or subject. You just become one with the environment. Okay, let's not dwell too long because there's a lot of things to cover. Anapana goes from the human realm up and up and up and up and up and up and up. So because that can be used for most of the jhanas. These also correspond, the names here, creator. So with the casinas, when you create your casino and then you are holding it and visualizing it, you can feel like a god. Sometimes that can feel like a planet you're observing, you can feel like a god watching it, and there it is. Okay, Brahma, this is what this is called, Brahmaloka. And then you have Brahma's retinue, where you have all these other powerful forms of sense of creation that goes together with that. And then Mahabrahma, which is something like creator, team and director, something like this, just as a guideline that I put in there. Realms 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. Realms 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 21 up to 22. Those ones above that, when people get arahantship, fully enlightened, or when they also get the stage just before it, their conscience can easily enter and remain in that stage. It means also it doesn't decay and you don't fall around. Other ones you do. If you do light casino, yellow casino, white casino, red casino, for a long period of time, you get blissed out, and then eventually you come back down again. Because you just cause this condition to happen and then remove the cause and come back down again. If you do charity work, you feel grateful, I give grateful, and then you get back to feeling ratty and normal. Yeah? But those stages, because you've completely uprooted, deeply uprooted defilement, you don't fall away. The state maintains up there without falling down. And then when the body dies, anagamis will be reborn in that one. Not arahants don't get reborn. Those are Deva realms. This is the human realm, occupied with the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and defame, pleasure and displeasure. There's Tavatimsa, realm of 33, and Tusita. These are delightful realms, but as you can see, they're in the Karma Loka. Still mansions, still opposite gender. You get female devas and male devas, and they will go off and make love, and we get surrounded by loads of friends partying away and all that sort of thing. Very sensual realm. So the kings of it would come down, look at the Buddha and go, you should see them, they're just non-stop, Or monks would get reborn in there, so I can't meditate there, too much music, just non-stop. It's like a very active realm, these, and they're full of pleasure gardens and mansions and all kinds of things like that. So it's like a club med of the celestial realms. So we got then 29 and 28, basically the infinite perspective, and then contemplating the mind that knows infinite perspective. They're two different things. So one, you could get on a platform and go, wow, space, look in every direction. But then are you looking back at your own state of mind? Something like that. No things, 30, and not perception or non-perception, 31. Arupa, immaterial, 2, Rupa Loka. Talking about that. I've lost it a bit. Come on. No, that's not going to help. Let me just see what we can do about that. We have to open this up again. Just a moment. Could we just pause the camera again? Just want to sort out this technical. Yeah. Just pausing a moment.